all, heed the words I now shall call. Live you must, and let to live, fairly take and fairly give. Do what thou will if it harms none, by the magic of old may it be done. 9 woods in the cauldron go, as above, so below. Welcome to Stirring the Cauldron on the Para-X Radio Network. And now, here's your host, Marla Brooks.
Mary Mead, and welcome. I've got a really interesting show tonight with a very interesting guest, and we're going to be talking about one of my very favorite subjects, divination. Now, Starr Casas is an old-style root worker, and her work shows in her teachings and in the books that she writes. She tries to live in a way where she honors the ancestors and clients that come for her help. And she was raised in the Southern culture of the Deep South and holds on to the values of her ancestors. She's a traditional conjure woman with 4 living generations of workers and 2 generations that have passed on. And for over 40 years, she's been helping folks through their ancestral heritage of old-style conjure work. Now, she's the best-selling author of several books, including Old Style Conjure, which she talked about on her last visit on the show. And this week, we're going to be talking to her about her latest book, Divination Conjure Style. So, Starr, it's nice having you back for a visit.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, anytime. You keep writing books, I'm going to keep having you.
I'm going to keep writing them, baby.
There you go.
I got to share this wisdom as long as I'm here to share it.
That's what we're here for. We have, certain paths that we need to follow, and we must follow.
Yes,
so
ma'am.
I guess I need to address the most obvious question first, because a lot of people in the chat room and that are going to listen to the podcast are very familiar with divination. So how does conjure-style divination differ from other forms of divination?
I think that within the book that I wrote, I don't think that folks are used to the blue water divination. I think that is the oldest style of divination. That's something that my mama worked with. My mama didn't throw cards or bones or none of that. Mm-hmm. But she did look into the blue water. And I think that is the oldest that is not really out there. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so the blue water is kind of like, I would say, a double-edged sword, because not only can you see within the blue water, but it also offers a protection. Yes.
See, I had not heard of that. I mean, I've heard about throwing bones and lots of things. And one of the things that we're going to get into down the line is reading regular playing cards, because there's a lot of that in the book. And that's going to be really interesting because there's a lot of readers that are listening in. But, we always hear the expression that everything old is new again. But something has to be old and outdated before it can become new again. And that doesn't seem to be the case with conjure-style divination, because unlike other methods that suddenly get popular and then they fade away as quickly as they came, conjure-style divination isn't, and I don't think ever will be outdated because, and correct me if I'm wrong with my terminology, but conjure-style divination isn't a fad. It's a way of life, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. This is the way I live. This is the way I was brought up. My children are brought up. My grandchildren and my great-grandchildren. Mm-hmm. You see, I have great-grandchildren. And so they will be brought up as I was, as my children were, and as my grandchildren have been.
Mm-hmm. It goes down generation to generation. And again, the way of life. And I think, that's really important, because it's not just something that you pick up because you want to and it might look interesting, but it's in your blood, definitely in your blood.
Yes, ma'am.
Mm-hmm. And that,
for me, that is true. For
Mhm.
me and my I can't speak for other folks, but for me and my family, that is true.
Mhm. Yeah, and sometimes I was reading this story in your book when you're talking about you and your family that it's true. I was reading the thing about your husband, and I'm trying to find it now.
The witch and sticks.
The witch and stick, yeah, because all
Yes,
right,
the
that
witch and sticks.
that wasn't really in
Yes.
his blood, was it? Or
No.
you didn't know that it was. Tell the story. It's a wonderful story.
Okay, I will tell this story because it still amazes me. Me and my husband have been together for 40 years. December 11th will be 40 years.
Wow.
So, and we're very close. He's like my best friend.
Hmm.
So one day he was late coming home from work, and I was like, where in the world is he at? So I called him and I was like, babe, where are you at? It was after dark. And he was like, I'm over here trying to find this line with my witching sticks. I was like, oh my God, what do you know about witching sticks? So we had a big old laugh about it. But even though he comes from a different culture than mine,
Hmm.
he literally works with witching sticks. He works in the oil field. So he literally can find oil lines or gas lines working with witching sticks. And so then when I was writing the book, and he's kind of shut mouth, you know. He knows what I do. My mother-in-law was a spiritual worker, but my husband is kind of like not into it, right? Even though his mother was. And so one day we were sitting at the table when I was writing a book at the kitchen table. Everything happens at my kitchen table. And so we were sitting there and I was like, babe, tell me about the witching sticks. And so I knew if I came right out and asked him, he would clam up, wouldn't tell me anything. So I started like interviewing him, asking him questions. And I was like, babe, do you think that anybody can work the witching sticks? And he was like, no. He was like, they will make them sick if they're not meant to do it. And this is something that I knew because my grandma was good with the witching sticks, right? And so I just kept asking him questions. And so afterwards I was like, I'm going to add you to the book. And he was like, for real? Why? And I said, because this is to him, it's just like me. What I do is an everyday thing. And, my students keep telling me over and over, Mama, what you know, not everybody knows. But in my world, I feel like everybody should know this because this is what I grew up with, right? So he's like, it's just something that I know, and I thought it was so cute, but I was also amazed that I'm married to a man that knows how to work with witching sticks. What are the odds of that?
Well,
and that's something I never knew about him.
That's the funny part. After all these years, you're best friends, and all of a sudden, just out of the blue, 40 years, 30 years down the line, you think, oh my God, where did that come from? Yeah.
Right. But I'm beginning to see that sometimes spirits have jokes,
Yeah.
They gift us things and people that we really don't understand until it's time to understand them, if that makes sense. But I was like, yes, my man who is not a worker and who does not believe in the work is actually a worker. Spirit gifted him with a gift. So, yeah, I had to include that in the book because I just thought it was great.
I did too. And I mean, it made me smile when I read it because it's just one of those
Right?
things that, you don't expect you don't see it coming.
Right. I couldn't make that up. You know, and I was like, and I remember that day. It was getting dark, and I'm a worrier. You know, if he's not home by dark, I'm calling, wanting to know, you know, why are you late? What's going on? And that day when he told me I'm trying to find a line and I'm working the witching sticks, I was like, oh my God. You know, what in the world is going on?
It's amazing, and it was just so much fun to read that. It really was.
Well, thank you.
So I'm jumping now to another thing. Here we go. I hope you got your seatbelt on tonight.
Oh, I'm good. I'm used to jumping around, so I'm good.
Okay, great. Now, you say straight away in the book that while doing divination of any sort, we're opening ourselves up to the spirits, and we do need protection. And we all have various ways. Most people I know have enough sense to do that in their own way. But there are those that kind of walk around and say, well, I don't need any protection because God is always looking out for me, and that's all the protection I need. Well, I kind of think that's a nice thought, but I think, to go on faith, to have that much faith is great. But is faith enough all the time that we can just rely on that? Or, do we call in the helpers when we do divination?
Right. This is my thought on that. And of course, this is simply my thought. I think that spirit does not insert themselves unless we ask them to. I feel like any work that we do or any time we open ourselves up to spirit, that we have to petition them for their assistance, for their help, and for their protection.
Right.
I think that us in this age and time, that we take things for granted that we shouldn't.
Right.
What and why should spirit just offer us protection without us asking for it? I mean, really, that's unrealistic. But I do know that there are people that do that. They automatically think that the spirits and the ancestors are there to protect them and to take care of them. And they do. But if you don't show honor and respect and ask first, then why assume that they are just going to be there?
Yeah, that's the whole thing, the assumption. Even if it was the case that we knew that they were there all the time, I think I would still petition them, because you just never know. Maybe they sneeze and sneeze and don't hear us. I mean, it's always good to have your own back as well.
In my world, I look at it as being a Southern woman. I look at it as being disrespectful.
True.
To assume.
Yeah.
That would be like me assuming that you, Miss Marla, had me on this show because of who I am. I should be grateful for that, and I should say thank you for that. So to assume that the ancestors just have your back just because you're you, to me is disrespectful.
Yeah, no. And
but then I'm an old Southern woman, so what do I really know? You know
a whole lot. Don't forget, I've read both of your books. I know that you know a lot. But the other thing that's really important is, in the book you talk about that you say your prayers to God, but also to your ancestors and all the spirits that walk with you. And so it's not just a one-time thing. And they give you protection, they give you strength, but you also make a good argument for, asking for protections, because while our surroundings might be perfectly safe, those who may get close to us might bring some stuff in with them that they're not aware of. So it's covering all the bases. I mean, you got to get rid of the cooties before they strike. and be
Who
aware
you,
that that could happen, honestly.
I have not heard the word cooties in so long, but yes, you are correct. That
Mm-hmm.
is correct.
Mm-hmm.
That's the truth.
Yeah, and we some people will have the ability to get bad vibes from people that they don't know. You get close to somebody and you get the willies. You know this person is putting some bad stuff out there, but a lot of people don't. And in order to just kind of make sure that you just have to do what you have to do to keep safe, because people they have laundry and garbage with them, and monkeys on their backs, and they share them, even though they may not be aware that they're going to share them. They do. So it's always better to be careful. Very.
Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
That's why before any job that I take, any consultations that I do,
Mm-hmm.
I will throw the cards on that first, because first and foremost, I have to protect myself.
Mm-hmm.
Because whatever affects me affects my family.
Yes.
So you have to really be careful about who you're dealing with, because not everybody is walking with the same spirits that you walk with.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody is on the up and up, so to say.
Mm-hmm.
So it's also better to be careful and watch who you're dealing with and what you're dealing with
Mm-hmm.
before you jump into it.
Yeah. Better safe than sorry.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's kind of the
Yes.
way it goes. I just got a question from chat, because earlier on you were talking about blue water, and they
Yes,
would like
ma'am.
to have a little better understanding of what blue water is.
Okay, blue water is an old-timey remedy for protection, but not only for protection. Blue water is, for a better word, kind of like a crystal ball.
Mm-hmm.
Like on my reading table, if you had a photo of my prayer house,
Mm-hmm.
On my reading table there is an old mason jar full of blue water.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I'm doing readings for folks, when I can't necessarily get through with the cards, because sometimes folks don't tell you exactly what is going on,
Mm-hmm.
so therefore Spirit has to step in. Blue water is real good for divination.
Mm-hmm.
And you simply make the blue water, and you can use Mrs. Smith's bluing,
Mm.
or you can use the old-timey blue balls,
Mm-hmm.
and you simply put it in a glass or a jar. I personally wouldn't use plastic, but with this work, anything that you have to use, you work with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would put it and just simply light a candle and just watch that water and see what comes up in the water. And you'll be amazed at the things that you can see in that water and the things that you can figure out with working with other divination to find out the issue of a problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
it has never failed me.
It's for people that might not completely understand. It's a form of a scrying, as people will use water,
Yes, that's the word. Yes.
or some people. Well, a crystal ball is scrying, actually, for that matter, too. So there's all kinds of different scrying methods, and but the other thing too with divination of anything, you're going to be better at some things than others, and so if people want to try different methods of scrying, that's great, but don't be discouraged if you give it your all and it just doesn't quite click with you, because there's just so many other modalities out there. But it's fun to kind of go and try each one and see what happens. It truly is.
Yeah.
It just opens up a lot of doors and a lot of consciousness, and it's really wonderful. Now, here's another thing from the book that made me smile. I like the quote that your mama told you about spirits can't hurt you, but they can make you hurt yourself. And
Exactly. She always told us that.
mhm, that is really good advice because, I mean, in a lot of ways, because, I mean, they can, all right, they can't come out and smack you upside the head. Well, maybe they can, but usually they don't. But they can create a situation where you believe you're in danger, which will kick you into a panic, which will make you do something stupid, and it kind of turns into a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point. That's probably how they work it. They just want to make sure that they get us just off kilter enough to do something dumb and hurt ourselves. What do you think?
I agree with that. And, she told us that our whole life. And when you're a kid, you're like, oh, okay. But when you get older, you start to look at these things and you're like, oh, well, maybe she was giving us wisdom and not just being cheeky. Yeah. My mama, sometimes she would never be blunt and come to the point. Now that I'm older, I'm 65. So now that I'm older, I'm looking at all these little things that she told us, and it really makes you think and makes you contemplate on the things that she really said. And like that the spirits can't hurt you. I truly believe that. Mm-hmm. But I think that also that with her telling us that was trying to make us be at ease with any spirits that we may see. For a couple of years, I dreamed of my grandfather. Well, I don't think that I really dreamed of him. I saw him, and it was just simply this man in this white dress shirt that would peek around the door of my bedroom. And one day I was talking to my oldest sister, and I've never wrote about this. And I was telling her, I said, I keep seeing this man. He doesn't say anything, but he's got a big smile. And I explained what he looked like to her. I said, he has on this dress shirt, and he keeps peeking around my bedroom door at me. I'll just wake up in the middle of the night and see him. And she was like, that's our granddaddy. And see, I wasn't lucky enough to live when he was alive, but she was. And so from my explanation about what I was seeing, she knew exactly who it was. Like, she didn't even bat an eye. She was like, that's our granddaddy. I was like, oh, okay. Well, he must have a message for me, you know? Mm-hmm. And then I started writing books. And so here we are, 17 books later, and I'm still writing books.
As you should be, truly. Now, one of the things, we're going to talk about divination with playing cards after the break, because it's a pretty much of a primary focus in the book and really, really interesting.
Yes, ma'am.
But we have a couple of minutes before we do that. So let's talk about some of the tools that are commonly used in conjure divination.
Yes, ma'am.
What do you got?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Well, the cards, of course. But for me, the bones. That is my most strongest reading tool. Yes, the cards are talked about because that's something that is everywhere, right? And I did learn to read the cards when I was 16 from my cousin's aunt. But for me, the bones, I think that the bones are something that comes from the ancestors that was brought over here from the times of slavery. So I think that is the oldest divination style for me. And I have found one of my students gifted me a doe skin, a deer skin, that literally came from South Africa. Now, he brought this over here when his mother's from South Africa. So he brought the skin over here when he was like 12 years old. Well, about 10 years ago, he gifted me that skin for my birthday, which I was honored, and touched. Yes. And I find that when I throw the bones on that skin or lay the cards on that skin, that the ancestors really speak loud and clear. So I would say bone reading is my very strongest suit, but card reading is the next. Playing cards. I can't understand tarot for whatever reason. I don't know why. I just can't. But card reading, that is a very strong point for me.
And we're going to get to that, but we've got like 2 minutes. I got a question from the chat room. How do you use the bones?
The bones are worked, not mostly, but are worked through the ancestors. This is how I read the cards. It's totally through the ancestors. And I gifted my bones to my ancestors, and I also gifted my cards to my ancestors. So yes, the cards have meanings to them, the playing cards, and the bones have meanings to them, and we will really get into this whenever our next segment, I guess. But I strictly read through my ancestors, and I have found when you read spiritually through your ancestors, that it is a more on point reading, like you can dig deeper. When you are reading through spirit, excuse me, than you can through just knowing the meanings of cards or the meanings of bones.
Exactly. All right, we're gonna take a break. We'll be back in 2 minutes, everybody. So stay put, and we'll be talking about bones when we come back.
Don't go away. There's more Stirring the Cauldron with Marla Brooks right after these important messages.
Hey there. I don't know if you've heard, but there's a great new radio show on Para X. 2 hosts, 1 hour, and too much fun. Stephanie and Heidi not only talk about the latest goings-on in the supernatural worlds, they live it. They want to hear from you. They want to help you understand and guide you. And they want you to tune in. So, grab a friend or come alone to gather around that metaphysical table with Heidi and Stephanie. If you're interested in the worlds of the unseen, tune in to the Gathering Radio Show, Tuesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern on Para X Radio.
Just in time for Halloween. Explore the second edition of the Witch's Oracle deck through 45 innovative cards and enhanced guidebook that peers into the world of the witch. The deck's stunning artwork has a new look and includes 7 brand new inspirational cards. Each card now includes a suggested crystal or gemstone to enhance your reading, as well as a magical incantation that provides energy, reinforces the card's meaning, and helps the desired message to be sent out into the universe. The easy-to-navigate guide also has a new look and offers straightforward, gentle guidance that takes readers through both good times and bad. And now includes a chapter on crystal and gemstone divination by the amazing Nicholas Pearson. The deck can also be used in conjunction with tarot, the Witch's Oracle. It is a perfect divination deck for witches as well as non-pagans, and is designed to suit both seasoned readers and beginners alike. Find out more about the Witch's Oracle deck at marlabrooks.com, and is now available for pre-ordering from schifferbooks.com and amazon.com. Welcome back to Stirring the Cauldron. Once again, here's your host, Marla Brooks.
Hey, welcome back, and glad you're sticking around. And for those of you who might be latecomers, my guest tonight is Starr Casas, and we're talking about Divination Conjure Style. And to pick up where we left off, we were talking about the bones and how to use them. So go for it, Starr.
Yes, ma'am. So, as we know, each animal has their own power, so to say. Like the possum. I read possum bones, and that is the traditional bones for reading, or chicken bones. Okay, so I'll start with the possum bones first, but we'll go into a few different kinds of animals. So basically, when you're doing bone readings, you look at the bone, where it falls, and what does that animal represent. Like possum bones are things that are hidden, like things that are not real, because the possum will act like it's asleep, but it's truly not. It's faking it, so to say.
Right.
So within a reading, I not only have possum bones, but I have other things in there. Like I have a key, I have a turtle that Cindy Toto gifted me. And with that turtle, that tells me it not only represents prosperity, but it also represents things moving slow, like a turtle would, right? A turtle shell represents protection. So it all depends on how it falls within a bone reading. So it depends on what type of tools you have within your bones. I have a shell from the beach that my grandson gave me when he was, I don't know, maybe 5 years old. And he's 26 or 27 now. So depending on how that shell, because the beach flows, right, back and forth. So with me, depending on how that shell falls within a reading, it tells me if you are flowing in the direction that you should go, or if you may be stuck. If it flips upside down within the reading, then that's closed off. I mean, upright would represent a flow, but face down, to me, tells me that you are stuck, within a reading. If the key is away from you, everybody knows that a key opens the roads or closes it. If the key is facing away from you, and it may fall on the back side of that shell that is face down, then that would typically tell me that you have some issues going on. Things might not be flowing in your life the way they should be flowing. So it truly all depends on how the bones fall and what is that specific bone linked to. Like possums sleep. Possums hide things, right? Shells represent ebb and flow. A key opens or closes. Raccoon penis bone represents sexuality or male sexuality, but depending on how it falls in the throw, it could also represent a turn in the road, into whatever your relationship is going, in what direction. So it really depends on how the bones fall and just the flow of the reading. I was taught to read in sections. So when I throw the bones, wherever my eyes hit first, that's where I start. And I will follow that. And I have found that when I do a bone reading, that it ends up telling a story. And like every story, there's a beginning and there's an end.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, whatever you can achieve and whatever is in the way of that achievement.
Mm-hmm.
I've been reading the Bones since I was a kid, but it started out as a game, you know. And how do you teach kids? You teach them as a game.
Mm-hmm.
And so really not only the Bones, but a true reader, a true bone reader can read anything. And I've learned over the years to read through my ancestors. So my bones and my cards are dedicated to my ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
And so they speak through them. And this is, I feel, how I'm able to read.
Oh,
I don't think that it's me. I think that it's the ancestors.
I'm with you on that, because every time something clever comes out of my mouth during a reading, I know it's not from me. You know, I mean, it goes through to somebody. We have to give them credit where credit's due. Yeah.
Right.
So let's jump a little bit to the cards, because playing cards, I mean, I realized I was reading a long time ago when I was reading up on tarot that, you know, reading cards always started with playing cards. And I know that those who are tarot readers will kind of find that it's easy to read a regular deck because just like the tarot deck, playing cards are broken down into the suits, you know, the spades, the clubs, the diamonds, and the hearts. And there are layouts the same way that tarot readers do. And the only difference that I could really see, basically, was because you also have court cards and number cards, the only thing that I saw differently was a couple of joker cards. And so it really is pretty similar, isn't it? Well, I know you said you don't read tarot, or, you know, it doesn't resonate to you.
No, tarots are my curse, so to say. I just can't seem to get them. But the joker cards for me represent the ancestors and what they have to say. Or a message from spirit. So I always, as I was taught, keep the joker cards in my deck, so to say. And I work with the Crossroads Layout, which, as I say in the book, is a layout that Mr. Robert taught me to work with, and I'm comfortable with it, and it just comes natural to me.
Right, right.
And so within that layout, the first card that's laid down is the foundation. This is what the reading is all about. No matter what the person I'm reading for says, I always trust that foundation card because I trust spirit, right? And so the top card is always the card that is on my mind, or on the reader, you know, whoever I'm reading for, on their mind. This is truly what the situation is. Then the bottom card is what is walking with them. You see what is really and truly going on. Then the back card is what is following them, what is behind them, what's trailing them. And the front card is what is going to, you know, what they're looking forward to. And then the card on top of that, on top of the foundation card, is the card that's going to come, you know. But like any reader, I believe that anything can be changed. I think that any bad reading can be worked to change that outcome. Readings are simply a way for us to get messages from spirit, to see what is the possibility that could happen. But I think that if it's not what we want or not what we expect, we can always change that through work. I believe that no reading is written in stone.
Exactly. I look at it as a roadmap. If you don't like where it's going, well, take a turn on the other direction. You know,
Yes.
we can do that.
Yes.
We have free will, so we can do that.
Yes. Yes.
Now, like on a regular tarot deck, I'm just making the example, the cards all have set meanings. Like, you know, the death card is a symbol of change, for example.
Yes.
So in the
That
playing,
would be the Ace of Spades.
okay, so the playing cards each have their own meanings, like cards would. But are they?
Yes, ma'am.
Does everybody that reads a regular playing deck, do they have the same meaning for each card? You know,
I don't think so.
Okay, that was.
I don't. Right.
No, go ahead.
I don't think so, because I have had folks read my book,
Mm-hmm.
and then they have researched or whatever and come back and said, "Hey, Mama, this don't mean the same." And I'm like, well, you have different readers who get different answers
Mm-hmm.
for different situations. I can only say what Spirit has led me
Yeah.
to believe, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And, you know, sometimes when the eight, and since we started with Ace of Spades,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes when the Ace of Spades comes up, that's not always about a drastic change or things moving forward with a blow up.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that can mean the end of something, but in a good way, like
Mm-hmm.
letting go, cutting loose what binds you, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it all depends on the layout of the cards, the person that you're reading for,
Mm-hmm.
and the message that's, and since I read through spirit for me, the
Mm-hmm.
message that Spirit is given, it should all tell a story, you
Mhm.
know?
Exactly. And that's what I was, you know, because I was looking through the book, and just so everybody knows, Mama Starr has, I mean, all you need to do is pick up this book and read it, and you'll be able to read playing cards, because she's got all the suits, all the cards, the meanings of all the cards. She does a lot of proverbs at the end of on all of them, proverbs and Bible things. But it's easy. I mean, the meaning of each card is in this book. And so if you have a deck of cards and you want to experiment, if you're a tarot reader or whatever, do it, or just learning. Pick up the book and it's right there for you. I mean, when I started learning tarot, I had to go buy a couple of books, you know, to kind of point me in the right direction. And here it is with not only the cards. I mean, it talks about layouts, it talks about all kinds of things, combinations. This book is kind of like a treasure trove of divination in many ways. I mean, talks about reading the bones, and the blue water and everything. I mean, there's just so many methods. And the other thing too, candle magic, which is something
Yes,
I think
ma'am.
all of us start doing, because that's pretty much the easiest thing. And I see there's another question in chat. When reading a deck of regular cards, could the Joker be equated to the Fool in the cards in the Tarot deck? Because, well, if you know, the Fool in the Tarot deck is the one that's the beginning of the journey with the Fool.
Right, just takes off and believes in everything and
Mm-hmm.
thinks that everything's going to be okay. It's a possibility. For me, the Joker represents the ancestors and the word of Spirit and the information that Spirit is sharing. When the Joker comes up in a reading, and it really doesn't happen that often, although I have had Jokers, because when I read for folks, I will lay out the cards 2 or 3 times, because I take what I do very seriously, and I want to make sure that I'm passing forward the right message. And so when the Joker comes up more than once within a reading of someone, I take that very seriously. I feel like Spirit is like, hey, I'm telling you, and I'm not going to continue telling you, but I'm telling you again to show you that this is the message.
Mm-hmm.
It could be the Fu. I'm gonna be honest, I've never looked at it like that. I've always looked at it as spirit speaking or the ancestors speaking.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for answering that. That's pretty clear. What was I going to say? Let me think. Just got carried away, and I lost my I lost my train of thought, which is like losing your brain halfway down the thing. Oh, okay. There's it was the question in chat. She wants to know: can blue water be used like Florida water?
That I don't know. I've never thought of it like that, but blue water is protection. And so we have to think about water in general. Water draws spirit. I was taught if you have nightmares or you have something going on meeting you in your sleep, put a glass of water by the bed because the water will draw that into it. So blue water is about the same thing. Blue protects and water draws spirit, so I don't see why it couldn't be used for a protection thing.
Yeah, I think Florida water is multi-purpose, and while blue water may just be really good for divination, who's not to say that it can't be used for everything. I mean, let's be honest with our tools and the things that we use. Anything that we pick up and we believe in and we put enough intent into and enough faith into, it'll work. That's how I see it. So
that's how I see it too, honey. It's all in the belief, and if you claim it, as far as I'm concerned, if you claim it and you plant that seed, that tree is going to grow and it's going to be yours.
That's it. I mean, that's absolutely right. Another question, we're talking about different forms of divination. One of the things, we've talked about water, we've talked about bones, we haven't talked about candles, but people know about candles pretty well. I'd like to hear about one more thing, and that's eggs. I love eggs through divination. Talk to me about it.
Eggs. So I learned how to work with eggs when I was 17 years old, when I had my first child. And I learned and matter of fact, that is my first working experience. And I learned to work with them because he was very ill. Thank God. He's 48 years old now, grown to be a strong man. But when he was a baby, he was very ill. And so I learned to work with eggs. He was a severe asthmatic. And folks who have asthma tend to run high fevers. And so I learned to work with eggs to draw the fever and the congestion out of him. And so when you learn to work with eggs, you have to learn to read them because you have to know, like anything else, if you need to do more, or is that enough, or, excuse me, or if everything's cleared up. So the way I was taught was to brush the egg on him, making small crosses while praying the Holy Trinity, going in a downwards manner, and then once the egg will feel different to you. And I've done this so many years till the egg really will feel different. It will either feel lighter, heavier, colder, or hotter. It just depends on what you are praying, what you're trying to remove, and what is going on with spirit at the time. And then you crack that egg into a glass of water. And I was taught to put 2 broom straws in the sign of the cross on top of the water, and it will not sink. It will just sit there. And that is to hold whatever you took off in that egg into that glass of water, right? Where it doesn't get out and go anywhere. So working on at 17, working on my son, I was amazed at the different readings that I got off the eggs. At the time, I didn't know that they were considered as readings. I just know that my elder was telling me, what I was seeing, what that meant. My son's fever got so hot one time, and this is the honest to God truth, until it literally cooked the outside of the egg. Oh. Like if you put it in a skillet and was making a sunny side up egg. I had never seen anything like that in my life. And that's when he had spinal meningitis. And we were actually in the hospital and this was in the 70s. We were actually in the hospital for 3 weeks because of that.
Wow.
But the egg took the fever off and gave me time, to take him to the emergency room without any after effects, of it really affecting him. But yes, the egg reading will tell you, and you can actually read signs within those eggs as to what is going on. But it is truly a healing tool. The egg is truly a healing tool, but it can be worked for divination. Like it will show you if you have a cross condition. You will see all kinds of examples within that egg when you drop it in that water. I think I show a photo in the book of an egg reading that I did on myself, and there was actually a blood spot within the egg. So when you see a blood spot, I did tremendous uncrossing, reversal works, and all that after I cleansed myself with that egg. But when you see that, like I say in the book, you really need to do some uncrossing work and some cleansing work. Because whether that is self-imposed or if it's something that someone sent to you or if it's something that's just there, it needs to be cleared away.
Yeah. Well, so people are just going to have to buy the book to learn about all this stuff because it's amazing and it's all in there. And so, I'm sure they can get the book anywhere books are sold kind of thing. But the best place for people to find you and your books and also the Conjure Academy and your Old Style Conjure store is going to oldstyleconjure.com, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And people should go over there and learn about the Conjure store. You can buy things and whatever you need, supplies, whatever. But also the Academy is something that you should look into. And maybe one day you'll come back and we'll just talk about the Academy because that's a whole show in itself. But
yes,
there's a lot to offer. So anyway, we're running out of time. So thank you, Starr. Please come back. We got so much to talk about, and I really appreciate you coming back anyway. Didn't scare you off the first time.
Anytime. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. And thank everybody for listening in. And just a really quick note, I just want to say that Stirring the Cauldron now has a YouTube channel. And so if you like the shows, and it's a real easy way to find out is subscribe. It's free. So just pop over to YouTube and type in Stirring the Cauldron Para X and subscribe. And then if you click on the little bell up in the right-hand corner, little icon, it'll contact you and let you know whenever new shows are added. So it's really kind of easy peasy. And there's about 100 shows there now, if you're really bored. So anyway, just thought I'd mention that. But until next time, everybody, blessed be and merry meet again. Good night.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Stirring the Cauldron with Marla Brooks. Please join us again next week at the same time for another great guest and more cauldron stirring. Any rebroadcast or other use of this program without explicit permission is strictly prohibited. Copyright 2019. The Mysterioso March by Kevin MacLeod is licensed through Incompetech.com.